Thank you, Neely. Great job. Of course. Okay, and stand behind the podium or in front of the podium.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. And thank you for being here on a rainy Thursday evening. Really appreciate all of you guys being here. Hi, everybody at home watching on Facebook Live. So this is a very important and timely topic. Sorry. Am I good? Okay. So this is a very important and timely topic. A recent study done by McKinsey and Company just stated that companies that have executive teams that are ranked in the top 25% for gender diversity are known to have 21% higher profitability than the rest of the companies. So the way I look at it is this is not a women's issue. I know this is a women's organization. We're all about women helping women, but gender equality in the workplace is an economic issue. And to discuss that, we've got an incredible panel. And to get that started, my dear friend, Abhi Murthy, she's going to moderate, and she'll introduce the rest of the panel to you. Take it away, Abhi.
Hello, everybody. It's so good to see everybody here. And this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. The biggest inspiration in my life is my mother, who's now 82. She was the poster child for doing everything that women were not supposed to do. And so I've grown up in this tradition of women empowering women. So without further ado, I wanted to invite the panel up here for us to get started. Okay. So our first panelist is Julie Peck.
Should I introduce myself?
I can't, yeah.
Oh.
Our first panelist is Julie Peck.
Hi, I don't want to get feedback. I'm Julie Peck. I'm an Executive Vice President and General Manager at Wolters Kluwer Tax and Accounting. Wolters Kluwer is a $5 billion Dutch company based in the Netherlands, but with businesses all over the world in like 160 countries. I think one of the reasons that I'm here is because I get opportunities as a woman working for Wolters Kluwer, who, by the way, has a female CEO, named one of the top 50 most influential women in business. 3 out of 4 of our divisional CEOs, global divisional CEOs, are also women. That poor one guy. I used to work for him, though. It's a great place to be, and I get opportunities to share my experiences as a woman who's moved up the ranks and all of that, and I'm happy to do it here tonight. Thank you.
Let's see, did I put the mic on? I have to turn it on. Well, I'm Kathy Willard. It's already on. I should know that. I have had a career in government affairs and politics for the most part, and I think I'm here because I've been a leader in politics. I was the first woman elected city council president in the city of Atlanta. At the same time, our first female mayor was elected, which was, I think, really a great thing for the city when that happened, and I'm really excited that 100 women have been elected to Congress. Well, I think we're going to see great things from that.
My name is Nicola Smith, and I am the founder and CEO of Rebel and Reason. We are a branding, marketing, and innovation consulting company and training company here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm here, I am an unabashed feminist. My husband is well aware. But for me, a lot of the work I do and a lot of the opportunity that I saw in starting my own company was being able to spend part of my time really focused on pushing for equality, not just for women, but for underserved communities and constituencies. And so I'm one of the founders of another group called Digital Divas. I'm also organizing something called Rebel Women Breakfasts. So clearly I spend a lot of my time talking about gender issues in the workplace.
My name is Leslie Grant, and I currently sit on the Atlanta Board of Education. I have a part-time day job at Emory. I work in the Center for Mind, Brain, and Culture. That makes me sane, so I can deal with the elected piece of it. In Atlanta Public Schools, we have over $1 billion budget that we spend every year on about 54,000 children, half of which are girls. Most of our employees in the classroom are women, and we have just got to do more to have those be higher quality, more satisfying jobs, and that's a culture shift that's going to take a long time. And I also have a 19-year-old woman in STEM. She's my daughter Lucy is at Georgia Tech. She's a physics major. I was going to get her to come tonight and just school us all, but she is studying for midterms. So.
Yeah, in my enthusiasm to get started and introducing the panel, I forgot to introduce myself. My name's Abhi Murthy. I am a marketing strategy consultant. I spent a number of years with AT&T and Accenture. Before that, I work at the intersection of insights, customer experience, and analytics. One of the other hats I wear is programs committee co-chair at the Wireless Technology Forum. It's been a new role for me this year, and it's been super exciting. So I'd like to start the panel discussion talking about, we've all heard the press about how there is a lack of leadership, especially in the more senior ranks in corporate America as well as around the world. What can public and private companies do, and including the government, what can we do to change status quo?
So I found that in my own career path, there were definitely points at which I didn't know what the formula for success to get to the next level was. It didn't necessarily come from success in my current level, meaning I'm checking all the boxes, and yet what was keeping me from getting to that next step? And it definitely is around perception. It is around image and things like gravitas and stuff like that, right, as you rise up the ranks. And so I have a very strong point of view that there is a different model for being a successful executive woman than there is for being a successful executive male. It takes different things. You have different strengths. We have different strengths as women than a lot of men do. We're not all the same. And I think one of the things I would love for us to do as a community of women leaders is to start to create a model for or a view of what exactly are the characteristics of powerful, effective, successful women leaders who continue to rise up the ranks. I spent a lot of time trying to follow the male model and saying, well, here's what he did, and here's what all the men above me have done, and I'm just going to emulate that. And it did not work. It just made me kind of bitchy, right? Yeah. So I had to learn how to embrace things like warmth and approachability and likability and not shun them. And it actually made me much stronger, and it made people take me more seriously because I wasn't trying to be something that I'm not. But I had to figure it out on my own. It's not that obvious. And I think we need to figure out how to communicate what are the attributes, what are the behaviors, what are the things that women do that actually make them rise to the top, that are the same as men and that are different than men, and try and teach those things.
You always answer that so well. I'm not sure there's a second comment about that, but I having really had most of my career in politics, it's a little bit of a different environment because in politics you sort of take power, right? You know, if you want to hold a position, an elected position, you have to decide you're going to do that, and then you have to put yourself out there. And again, for better or for worse, you do have to decide how are you going to behave in that so that you're perceived as somebody who can do it. I look at what people say about Nancy Pelosi. Here's a woman who has raised $3 billion for the Democratic caucus and flipped the House. And the next day after the election, my Facebook page was full of men saying Nancy Pelosi has to go. It was men saying Nancy Pelosi has to go. And my thing is like, Bernie has to go, Biden has to go, Mitch McConnell has to go. They're all the same age. But they didn't flip the House. I mean, this is a woman holding power, and making very complicated decisions and bringing people together and negotiating things. And the response to that is she needs to go. She got Obamacare passed in the 2 years of the Obama administration. You know, that was not an easy task to do in that time frame and what was accomplished there. Obviously, these are somewhat partisan points of view in terms of the success of those things, but I use that to say that in politics, women really have to step up, and then you have to endure, you know, sort of a massive amount of criticism for the things that male peers would be rewarded for, and how you sort of balance that between, you know, as you said, you know, sort of being who you are, which is really negotiating, you know, your career from a point of strength, you know, while sort of taking all the incoming, which is quite unfair, and you know, sort of strives to set you off your game. So I think there's a lot of internal work that has to happen to allow yourself as a leader to get through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think about retention, and to me that largely comes down to, at least on the corporate side, I can't speak from the government side, it comes down to being intentional about how we start to think about the benefits and the services that women need as working women. So it goes beyond things like maternity leave, which it still boggles my mind that is not just standard practice in this country. I think it goes into looking at childcare alternatives and services that can support women who do choose to have children, and for that matter, women or people who choose to support an ailing parent or a family member who may have a medical issue. I think it comes down to flexibility. So from a retention standpoint, I think there are actually a lot of really proactive things that companies could be putting in place. And what we're starting to see now, especially in a tight labor market, is that companies that have done that proactively are seeing, you know, more retention of strong workers, and they're not having as much trouble hiring. And I am hopeful that this becomes the standard baseline that we as women expect when we are considering a job. I can't imagine at this point in my career, I have 2 little kids, I don't see having more. I still would not choose to go and work at a company that does not provide maternity and paternity leave. And so I have a power as an employee to force change in corporate America because I know I am a valuable asset. In regards to kind of attracting and encouraging female leadership, again, I think that needs to be intentional. I think all of us in this room are responsible for that. And I also think it's actually in many ways more imperative that the men that we work with are advocates and allies for us in the workplace. This is not something that we can achieve alone. Unfortunately, they still hold too much of the power. We have to have them proactively opening doors for us. And we have to convince them that this is a business issue, not a women's issue, and that ultimately not doing these things holds a much higher risk than taking the chance of being the guy that puts in place maternity leave and encourages and uplifts your female leaders. And so I think it is up to all of us to hold leadership accountable, and I think that applies definitely in the government space as well.
I'll add a little 2 cents about the public sector piece, which is obviously our public school system. And one of the things I think is really rich and really wonderful that's happened in Georgia, which we're not always the most progressive place on the planet, is that the State Department of Education actually has STEM and STEAM, which is STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Has put in a certification at the state level so schools can apply to become certified. And it's not like you have one little program that only the boys are going to go do or whatever. Your entire school becomes certified. So I do believe that there's, you know, just sort of creating a space for this that you just walk into. It's not a special school that you have to go to. Within Atlanta Public Schools, we actually decided we have 11 different clusters, so kindergarten through high school. And we decided to give the different populations the opportunity to pick their signature programming, and 4 of our clusters of schools are STEM clusters. We also have Drew Charter School, which is a STEAM school, and then purpose-built schools, we have a neighborhood called Thomasville Heights, if you're familiar with Atlanta at all. It's the census tract with the highest birth rate and the lowest income. And Thomasville Heights Elementary School has been one of the poorest performing in the state for many years. And we partnered with Purpose-Built Schools. They're now running Thomasville all the way up through Carver High School. And they've brought the entire sort of mix of STEAM to that entire population. And it's great. It's a wonderful thing. And I think when you're able to step back a little bit, understand what I think we have had a culture shift. Obviously, we need to continue that culture shift. But when you just believe in your kids and you believe in what's happening, and you're not putting some value judgments on them based on where they live, we're going to see a lot different leadership in the next 10 years or so.
We've talked a lot about earnings disparity between men and women, and one of the things that I've read is that as women, we are afraid to ask for what we're really worth, that we take the first offer that's given to us. So tell us about how you've handled that in your own careers. What have you learned? What lessons can you share with others?
Yeah, I've experienced lots as it relates to my own earning power, including a level of insecurity in insisting on my worth. I've had a lot of different jobs in a lot of different industries over the course of my career, and what was persistent is a fear of boldly asking for what I thought I was worth if it wasn't already being given to me. So we were talking about this the other day, and we were talking about unconscious bias as part of the driver. There is, I don't think there's anything deliberate in this, saying, oh, she's a woman, so I'm definitely paying her less. But there's some unspoken perception that influences how people place a value on what somebody's doing or what they bring to the table. I'm going to ask a question that's going to require maybe a little bit of bravery on your parts, but I'll participate too. How many of you have ever felt like an imposter who doesn't know what they're doing, and it's only a matter of time before everyone around them goes, oh my God, she has no clue? I have, right? Yeah. I thought that was uniquely me. I thought I'm just an idiot, and I don't know what I'm doing, and they're speaking in these acronyms, and I don't know what they are, and I feel incompetent. And at some point, they're going to look at me and go, what are you doing here, right? And that made me afraid of asking for what I deserved and insisting on getting paid or getting what I was worth. That was my own unconscious bias against myself. And I found that to be very common with many women who felt like imposters in the boardroom. That's like a term now. Imposters in the boardroom, or like that they were frauds. That inside they were like, I don't know, I'm winging this. I'm so winging this. And so everyone else around me seems more confident and more competent and all that. And it's all this self-doubt. Then I started asking men, powerful men. Every male CEO I've met in the last 20 years, if I've had the opportunity, I've said, so there's this thing called the imposter syndrome, and where people feel like they're winging it and faking it, and they really don't know what they're doing, and at some point people are going to find out. Do you ever feel like that? And every single one of these male CEOs that I've talked to, one-on-one, it's not a big group of people, said, every day. So the issue isn't that it was me and that I'm somehow uniquely unqualified for what I'm doing. It's that it's a human condition. It's about being human. It's not about being female. Everybody feels that way. In the workplace, at home when they're a mom or a dad, nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody's lived this day before. We're all winging it, right? The issue is, how much do you believe in what you bring to the table in the act of winging it? You believe you bring your education, your experiences, your point of view, your heart, your soul, your network, your ability to connect with people, whatever it is you bring to the table, and that's the tool set you bring to the table while you wing it, right? And if you believe in your tool set and all the things you've collected over the years, you should be able to assess your value and insist on being paid for it. And just know that the person you're asking is sitting there on the other side of the desk going, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. she's very forceful on me and I don't know how to answer her and I'm freaking out and I don't know what I'm doing. Everybody's feeling that way.
I had a follow-on question to that. If somebody offers you a job that you don't think is many levels below you, do you say yes or do you say, no, I'm not a clearance sale, I'm not going to do this?
I usually say, really? No. Like that happens a lot. Like I get recruiters that call me and they're like, I saw your resume and I think you'd be a perfect product manager. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I was 20 years ago. I'm not interested in doing that again. It's really, you know, it's one of those things where it's their weakness in not being able to sort of read through the lines. But I'm never taking a job that is less than what I want. In fact, I only take a job where there's about 30 to 40% of the job that I'm pretty sure I can't do. And because I believe in the tool set I bring to the table to wing it and learn that 40%. Mm-hmm. And however painful that might be, by the time I'm in that job for a couple of years, guess what? I know a whole bunch more stuff that I didn't know before, and I found out I can do the 40% that I thought I couldn't do. And that's the thing that makes me feel like I can ask for what I want and I know my worth. So,
Thank you.
Wow.
Next
Well,
time you go first.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm a consultant, and so I work in government affairs, and I have a fee schedule that I utilize with clients in the work that I do. But I did work on one particular project where a client came to me and said, we want to build a team with some pretty specific attributes, because in politics, you know, when you're building a team, you're going to build a bipartisan team, and you're going to add people in that do communications and stuff like that. And so they hired me and said, you know, this is kind of the limits of what we can pay and what we're going to do. And, you know, I was like, okay, fine. It was a project I wanted to do. And the pay wasn't off terribly much. But then I found out later that all of the people that I recommended that they hire, who coincidentally all were men, because politics is very, especially political consulting, is very, very male. Every man was being paid twice as much as me, even though the client, who I had worked for on multiple occasions, told me that there was a limit in this particular project. Well, then that sort of made me think for a little while, you know, and you know, finally I called them and I was like, hey, how come everybody I recommended you hire is being paid twice as much as me? I thought we all had this limit, and they agreed to pay me more, but, you know, it was really, you know, kind of a lesson. I don't go around trying to figure out how much everybody else is getting paid. It just ended up sort of being revealed to me in the course of business. And, you know, I just had not experienced a time where I felt like I had been, you know, massively underpaid relative to what was going on. And that was really quite an eye-opener for me to, you know, be more thoughtful, if you will, about when people say that, you know, they've got limits or this or that, whether I really want to participate in that. I still don't know the answer to that, but, you know, I was shocked to think that would happen, to be perfectly frank. I mean, I do know that, you know, that women do get underpaid. I get that, and I get all of the barriers that women have because I've probably seen them all. But, you know, to even go through the process of, this is a client that I've had for years on multiple different projects, and, you know, they came into this and then changed the rules midway. So, you know, I think we really do have to do our research and think about it, and then decide if we're going to go into a contract or accept a job where we really think that maybe I am getting underpaid either on purpose or that the rules are going to change midway. there's things that we really have to think about.
Yeah, and when we had our planning call, I brought up an example. I used to teach at the Creative Circus and recently saw a student of mine who has now, been a designer in the industry for 7 or 8 years, and she was posting about how, because of Me Too and all the discussion that's come up in the past 2 years, she decided to up her rates. And she was on the phone with one of her regular clients, and she said to them, listen, I need to let you guys know I'm upping my rates. This is my new rate. And she had been nervous about telling them, and it was dead silence on the other end of the line for a couple of seconds. And then the client came back on and said, you know what, we've actually made a decision that we are just gonna pay our male and female designers the same. And the rate they gave her was double what she had just quoted. So she was charging under 50% of her male counterparts. And that sounds like an anomaly, but I would guarantee that it is probably true for most of us that are entrepreneurs or those who are freelance. And so to me, if you're running your own business, you should whatever you're charging is not enough. Just period, it's not enough. So what I've started doing, honestly, is every time I'm about to submit a proposal to a new client, as long as they're not a nonprofit or if I know that there truly is limited budget, I'll just add an additional $10K to my pitch and just see what happens. Because by the point you're at negotiating price, they're not just gonna say, oh, too expensive, I'm out. They're gonna say, hey, this is a little higher than what we expected. Is there any way to come down? And so I've tried to just make it my standard practice to just add an additional 5 or 10K, depending on the scope of the project, to any proposal going out the door. And I've not once gotten pushback thus far.
That means you should add 20.
That's what I'm saying, right? So I think it's up to us to just push out. Like, men don't question themselves on these things, right? They don't think twice about charging what they think they're worth. We sit there and judge our worth, and there's actually a case study, I can't remember who talked about this, but it was a man, and he was asked, why do you hire, in the law industry, why do you continue to just hire male lawyers? And he said, they make me more money. Because if they're in the shower thinking about a case, that's billable time. If they're thinking about a case when they're on their run or walking their dog or watching TV, that's billable time. And women do not think about that as billable time. They think, well, I'm not on the clock, even though I was thinking about it and I actually came up with the solution, and so I'm not gonna bill them for that hour. So we've gotta literally think about all of the brain power and the time and the energy, the IP, the innate knowledge, the level of experience that we bring to the table, and we got to bill for that. When I'm billing you as a consultant, I'm not just billing you for my time, I'm billing you for the framework that it took me years to develop that is my IP. And so I do think we have to think very, very differently about it. And for those who are in corporate environments, do your research, find out what other companies are paying, because when I worked on the corporate side, at least 2 separate times, one of which I was pregnant during, I was able to negotiate a 30% raise based on understanding market value and being willing to walk away. So I went into the room and I knew this is my number, and if you can't meet that, that's fine, because I've got another job lined up. So know your worth, document your worth numerically and in business terms, not just Susan thinks I'm really nice. I mean, who cares, right? You need numbers, you need hard numbers that prove your value, and then you need to be willing to walk. And if they're not willing to meet that, you need another option on the table behind you, and you need to be willing to walk out the room. And
Yeah,
so you can tell I'm can be overly aggressive at times, I've been told.
No,
so.
I wanted to add to what Nicola was saying about doing the homework. I know that when companies have these rules on when somebody's promoted level, this is the raise we're going to give them. If they make a lateral move, this is the raise that we can give them. And usually it's a range. When I moved jobs, I always asked for twice as much because I knew they couldn't change the rules to give me twice as much, but at least I'm getting the maximum of what's allowed. But if I've never asked, I don't get anything. They just say, this is a fantastic new job, great opportunity for you, good luck with that. Leslie?
Yeah, I don't have anything positive to add to this conversation. Elected official, don't make any money there, not negotiable. And the job I took at Emory, I took because it offered like great benefits, wonderful work culture, and tremendous flexibility, and the people were awesome. So my trade-off in what it paid versus what I got out of it and what I needed, just to make me happy. Just the buck is the buck, and it's really important. And but I do want to throw that out there. Quality of life, quality of work environment, your culture that you're working in, all those kind of things are valuable. My husband, who used to teach at we need to talk Creative Circus, yeah. Works from home, could have been working for years in an ad agency or a creative organization and probably made a lot more, there's all kind of things that you get by being part of that thing, but chose to, he works for himself, he works from home, he's got all the time in the world, he's been there for our kids when I'm not there, and so I think we're like a really bad example, and I probably need to get some more mentorship from y'all, but the idea that my daughter, actually, she's going to be the one that takes care of us in our retirement. So that's good. It didn't pass down, I don't think. But I love that I came here tonight just to hear that, what did you call it? Insecurity thing?
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. No, that's wonderful. Because anybody can run for office, but as we have discussed a couple times here, like your qualifications and your skill set for running don't necessarily match up with what you're going to do when you get in there. And I can guarantee you, stepping into one of 9 people who is, go out and hire a powerful superintendent and, theoretically you're responsible for managing this $1 billion. It took me about 4 months, and I'm like, somebody let me in here. So it is, again, do what you can. I think women more so than men as a gender tend to have always contributed in the softer ways, and therefore don't, line up with the money piece as much. And in most of our traditional sort of way that we've seen things, there's a lack of confidence. Sort of what we give to it is not valued in that way, and so therefore we're not, and that is really important for women, girls, everybody to get over. So.
Thank you. And I wanted to say that you did raise a very important point, that every job, every step of your career is not all about money. And I think sometimes it opens doors to new experiences, new ways of growth and learning for you. So, I'm a big believer in not chasing the money, because I've chased money and I was miserable in the job, and everybody I met remarked how stressed out I looked all the time. And the minute I changed jobs, they said, I don't care what you've done, but you look a lot happier.
Yeah.
So I made less money, but I was a lot happier. So, let's talk about mentorship. So Kathy, I'd let you go first this time. I just want to switch it around a little bit. Talk about mentorship, and especially what did we do right with encouraging the slate of women who ran, as an example this time, and what could we do more of?
Well, we just pissed a whole lot of women off, is what happened. I'm not sure. I think, for politics, things have gotten so bad, and the condition of women and people of color in this country have become so challenged that people just decided, as I said, you grab power. You just can't wait for somebody to hand it over, because it's not going to happen ever. No one is going to give away power because they just think that's a great thing to do. And so I'm not sure that a whole lot of the women that ran for office were mentored as much as just decided enough is enough. You know, what do I have to lose, right? On the other hand, for anybody here who has been inspired by this election and thinks you might want to run for office, there are lots of places to get training. There are lots of ways that you can learn how to be in a campaign or how to work with public policy. It's really, politics is one of the only careers that I know of these days that really you can, it's almost like an apprenticeship, right? I mean, you can volunteer, to work on issues. You can volunteer in a campaign. You can, attend things and learn about issues. But there's no degree that you can possibly get that would qualify you to get a job in politics. People always say, "Oh, you should be a lawyer." You can hire lawyers. You don't need to be a lawyer. It's great if you are one, but that does not necessarily make you a good politician. That just makes you a lawyer.
You could just be a reality TV star.
Yeah.
And become a politician
That's right,
for the first time.
Exactly.
Apparently.
Yeah, so I mean, I will say, in politics, a lot of women who do get involved do come up through those ranks of issues that they feel passionate about. Lucy McBath just, won a congressional seat. She's never been a politician, but, unfortunately, because of the murder of her son, she got involved in issues about gun safety and common sense gun laws, and now she's a member of Congress. I mean, that is an extraordinary thing, but she got helped along the way because she was determined to sort of make an impact in that way. So that doesn't really answer the question about mentorship, but I really encourage women to think about politics and public policy because you don't need special qualifications. You don't have to be any particular anything. What you have to be is somebody who cares about people and about issues and, just want to get in there and help make the world a better place. And I think that's why women run for office. And so, I think we'll be better off because of that, and I think to the extent that we can help other women do that, it's great.
So what's interesting is I spend a lot of time with other female entrepreneurs, and most of the women I have met that have started companies of their own within the past, 3 to 5 years, have also been driven by anger at the system. So what's fascinating is when I speak to male entrepreneurs, it's usually they had an idea or a passion and they had this thing that they wanted to build and they kind of wanted to bring it to life in the world. Whereas women are often, and this is not a blanket statement, certainly there are women who just have a great idea and want to start a company, but most of the women that I'm speaking to have started their companies because they hit the glass ceiling and they just got sick and tired of dealing with the realities of sexism and inequality in corporate America. And they decided, I am not willing to do this anymore. And my entrepreneur story is similar. I had not really been fully on the corporate side anymore, but I'd worked in agencies, I'd worked on the publisher side, I had gone brand side, I had had amazing bosses, amazing mentors, who I still have today. But they always seemed like they had some pedigree or some credentials or the money or the background that had enabled them to be entrepreneurs and to start amazing companies. And then the last job I had before I started my own company, my boss had started this company. He was from a technical background. The company had been around for about 15 years, was doing, 14, 15 million in annual revenue. So not massive, but big enough that, gosh, if I can get my company that size, that would be amazing. And he had what I consider to be literally like negative 600% business acumen, and zero ability to deal with people. And I just thought, man, if this guy can run a company that makes like $14 million a year, surely I can create a company that just supports me and my family. Like, that does not feel unattainable if this dude can have this big of an organization. And so I would love to say that my origin story for my company was I was inspired and I just wanted to change the world, but it was largely like, if this dude can do it, I've got to at least try. Like, I've got to at least try. Like, you know, and just see what happens. And if I fail, I fail. I'll go work at Starbucks, right? And for many of the women I speak to these days that have started their company, it was driven by the same anger that I think we're seeing as a driver for women going into politics of, this is not okay, this is not all right, and I'm not willing to work in an environment that puts me into this situation. And more than that, I deliberately want to create a company where that is not the culture. And so all of the women I know who have created companies, they have a very specific focus on developing a culture of intention around equality, not just for women, but for people of color, for LGBTQ minorities, for immigrants, for refugees, for anyone who does not fit into kind of the model of being like a white man. So for me, I just think in the same way mentorship, I think, should be intentional. And I will say that it definitely goes both ways. Again, as an entrepreneur, I have clients today that were interns at one point when I worked on the corporate side, and they are now the ones making hiring decisions. So mentorship is really beneficial, not just as you're moving up, but as you're looking at those that are coming up behind you, there's real value in mentoring others as well.
Mm-hmm. Build as you climb.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not qualified to answer this question either. I have been put in positions where there were some folks that were prepared to mentor, and I just wasn't ready for it. And I think it's, so looking at both sides of that equation is important. Looking at, when we were talking about this and I was thinking about this, and Kathy, you brought up a point when we were on the phone about just sort of the time commitment, and if both sides aren't sort of committed to it, you end up feeling like, why did I do that, or you didn't get that out of it, or if somebody's not willing to put it in, do you end up feeling resentful? And I think there's a lot of things that can go wrong with sort of a formal mentor relationship. But one of the things that I just think is so important, because I'm, just in communities that I never ever would go to, on many occasions, and meet and talk with some very wonderful folks who had, just life hits you hard, and you don't see any way out of that circumstance or whatnot. And about, for lack of a better made up term, micro mentorship. And it has to, thinking about the way that you interact with people every single day. It doesn't have to be a formal relationship or anything else. Just, who are the people that you encounter at every level, and how do you leave them? Do you leave people that you interact with in a better place so that they're able to go do something and not be pissed off, and not, people look at TV and look at what's happening in our country and look at social media all the time. In these face-to-face personal spaces where you're interacting with people, just like doing your best to try and leave that person happy. The checkout lady at the grocery store, the person in the gas station, and just really thinking about that. I know I'm like getting way off topic here, but I really do think it matters. And obviously thinking about what we, women have different issues that we're dealing with all the time, and really trying to understand what space people are in and how you can positively interact with them.
We're just going to have Julie, and then we're going to do audience Q&A. Sorry.
I think that, so I've been lucky enough to have several mentors in my career, and also personally. And the ones that seemed to leave the most indelible mark on me were the ones that came to me as a more junior person and said, there's something about you that I feel needs to be cultivated. Can we spend some time together? I have been very uncomfortable asking people to mentor me, and that goes back to, when I was younger, not totally understanding my worth, and that I have a right to at least ask for someone's time, right? Mm-hmm. But But it was very powerful for me when somebody 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 levels above me came to me and said, why don't we have lunch? I mean, they were not offering me a job, or they were not, they weren't in my formal reporting chain, but for some reason they saw something in me and they wanted to be a sounding board. And so since then, I found that the most bilateral way, beneficial bilateral coaching experiences for me are the ones where I saw someone younger or more junior that I felt like had some spark of something. But maybe they didn't believe in themselves. And I would go find them and say, hey, let's spend some time together. And I've done that with young women, and I've done it with young men. In the women, I can offer my own personal experiences, saying, oh, I've been there, I've done that. Here's what happened to me, and here's what you might think about. In the men, I can't necessarily teach them through my personal experiences. But I can listen to them and give them guidance or advice or perspective that may be different from their own, and more importantly, model the behavior of a rational, thoughtful, caring female executive, so that they feel like there's a wide variety of senior female leaders, and they can see some of those qualities in there. But I don't wait for people to ask me to mentor them. I can be a little intimidating. So not a lot of people ask. But when I offer, they're like, yes. But people don't ask. And so I would say reach out and find the people you see a spark in and mentor them.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is ask multiple people. Don't give up after the first person says no.
Yeah.
Audience Q&A now. So how do we take lessons learned from corporate America on leadership, and how do we wrap it into school curriculum so all kids have a chance to experience and to develop leadership?
I mean, quickly, there's a couple of things that are happening that are pretty exciting. JA, Junior Achievement, we have a couple of JA academies now. One's at Douglas High School and Atlanta Public Schools. There's at least one in Gwinnett County Schools. But, so, I mean, just in terms of entrepreneurship and whatnot. And I do think there are a lot of efforts that are happening there. But there, if you are, as an individual, are really passionate about something, then go do it. And, right, we have reading programs, we have, reading buddy programs in a lot of schools. There's, next Thursday is career day at King Middle School, so I'm taking a friend. But just if that is your thing and you got some energy around that, I encourage anybody, go do what you're passionate about. Call a local elementary school, a middle school, wherever you think, you might fit. Jump through the hoops, wait until they, they're not gonna call you back, they're not gonna email you, you just keep going and knocking on the door, they got other things to do. But just be persistent about it and really push in. And if you can form a relationship with a school, that's a great thing. But sort of top down, okay, now we're gonna have our, mentorship curriculum is, that's a beast of a thing, which will require a lot of energy on the front end and may end up and may not. But I just think those individual little personal pieces. And again, I mean, mentorship is about modeling, right? I mean, and the more more children in our schools see successful people in their face, the better off they are. And, thank God for movies and Hidden Figures and, things that have happened in our culture that make all of these things we didn't think possible. Oh, there's a movie about, there's a video. There's the ability for our kids to access positive things is really great. So whatever we can keep throwing in front of them.
So the question is, do men and women handle power differently?
Yeah. Well, I think men's confidence about power is different. I mean, I think women inherently aren't confident about it and are not rewarded for seeking it. Mm-hmm. It is not seen as good or valuable or worthy. Imposter syndrome it does impact everybody, but I think every woman comes with a greater proportion of it. And I will tell you that, in politics, what I've seen is, I'm sorry we're on Facebook because I'd name names, but I won't. But I've seen men, run for offices for which they have absolutely no suitability whatsoever.
Yeah.
But there, no training, no, just nothing, but be completely confident that if elected, they could be governor, as demonstrated by prior performance on the job, but it's astonishing, Now, I will say, Karen Handel is somebody that I have known over probably the last 20 years. Again, we share very little politically because I'm a Democrat and she's a Republican, and we're probably both to the edges on both. But we have a very good relationship, and I like her a lot personally, and because she gets no rewards. Right, she has fought tooth and nail to get anywhere she's ever gotten. But what I love about her is she gets back on the horse. She gets knocked down, she gets back up. I will guarantee you that Karen Handel will find another race to run, and she will win it or she won't, but she will keep in the game. And I had a conversation early in my career with Marie Wilson, who started an organization called the White House Project, which was a project to elect the first woman president. And we were just having a conversation, and she said, "We know the difference between a women candidate and a male candidate." And I said, "What is the difference?" And she said, "Well, if a woman loses, she'll stop. She'll decide that rejection, or the fact that she didn't get elected meant she was not worthy, as opposed to the fact that there's all kinds of reasons that somebody doesn't get elected. I could tell you half a dozen of them. But that men, when they lose, just come back. Eric Allen has run 3 terrible races in South Cobb for the House of Representatives, and he won this time. God bless him. But I was just like, would somebody make him stop so we can win that damn seat? But it never deterred. I don't know the guy, so I'm sorry I'm on Facebook talking about him, but I just kept thinking, why does he keep running for this seat? He doesn't win it, but he did because he kept going, and he finally had enough name recognition or figured out how to run a campaign or whatever. Again, I don't know what his qualifications are, but it's just sort of an example of, how women just stop.
You just gave an example of Karen. She keeps going. I think it depends.
But she's unusual. She is very unusual for a female candidate. Yeah.
But we need to keep going for sure.
Yeah, we do. No, Karen is unusual. She's an excellent campaigner, and she's a very good politician, even though I don't wish her success most of the time. And she knows it, we've had this conversation, but I do have tremendous respect for the fact that, she is in an environment where there are even fewer people who, in her party, women aren't appreciated at all, and she doesn't get much encouragement or any help, and she just goes out there and does it.
Yeah. And
That's why we have this place, so we can encourage each other.
That's right.
Exactly. Yes.
I think it is partially something we're socialized with at a very young age. And so, I look at the difference. I have 2 little girls. I have a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. And, female relationships, even as we get older, are built on trust. And so it's a small group where everybody's equal, and you don't want to make your friend feel jealous or bad. And so you're not going to bring up, necessarily brag about your promotion or the amount of money you just negotiated and those types of things. Male relationships are hierarchical, right? There's the alpha at the top, there's whoever's at the bottom rung, and everyone in the middle, your location in that hierarchy changes. So when you're younger, you suddenly get really good at basketball. You move up in the ranks, right? You get a new car, move up in the ranks. Get a hot girlfriend, move up in the ranks, right? So literally, seriously, those things affect your ranking, even informally, within your hierarchical social structure as a man and as a boy. And our relationships as women do not work that way. So it's also why we have trouble when we're in a job and we do something good. We have trouble promoting it and talking about it, because with our female relationships, you're never gonna go to dinner and be like, oh my God, guys, I am awesome. Listen to how amazing I was this week. I knocked this meeting out of the park. I negotiated a $30,000 raise. I just bought myself a new car. I'm amazing. Let's get a round of drinks, right? That's not how we engage. but guys totally do that. You know, they'll go out for beer with their buddies and they're like, man, I had an amazing week. You should see the sports car I just bought. It's awesome. Like, let's go for a ride. And so the value of their social status is defined by very different things than what our social status is defined by in our relationships. And when we're in the workplace, we don't think about that difference, where you actually have to promote yourself. You have to say, yes, you know what, I did that and I am great at what I do and here's why. But I do think it's partially things that we're socialized with from very, very early on. And that is partially why it's such a struggle to kind of break out of that normative behavior where we're comfortable, because it is something that we are often still punished for in the corporate environment, and certainly in our personal relationships. That stuff does not go over well for women. So I think, again, it's a lot of it is about being conscious of these things and intentionally working to kind of break that normalized behavior that we tend to fall into.
Quickly. I want to ask you for how would you do that, but be more authentic and be more of a woman doing this? You know, you don't want to brag about the sports car, but how do you celebrate your accomplishments and achieve?
I let my husband buy me dinner and tell me how awesome I am. He's really good at that. No, you know what? I think, look, both men and women are powerful. The real difference is that men know where their power comes from. It's really obvious. A lot of it's physical. It's their voice is low. They're taller than people in the room. They've probably played sports on teams. You know, there's a ticking of the boxes. Women are less clear about where their power comes from, but they are every bit as, or perhaps more powerful than men in most instances. If you really learn to understand where your power comes from, which is not necessarily aggression or self-promotion or whatever, it's something much quieter, but you can really feel it. You do not you do not stay afraid to take a stand on what you've accomplished and what you've done and say, I'm really proud of myself. And you're not afraid that you're going to alienate some other woman in the room or some other man in the room by doing that. But it will come out differently, I think, if you're coming from a place of authenticity and sincerity than if you're coming from a place of insecurity and the need to have someone from outside validate you, which is really where that braggadocio comes from.
Yeah. And I think, in my mind, it's partially about how you then frame that accomplishment. So for me, and because I truly believe this, if you're leading a team, you know, your job is to enable that team and to make their ability to do their job easier. And so I think if you are going in and trying to frame a success, often what I'll do is frame it as, you know, I'm really proud that I was able to do this because it accomplishes X, Y, and Z for the team or for the company or against our specific quarterly goals. So I try to couch any accomplishment by tying it back to why as your manager or as your boss or as the head of why do I care that you did great in this presentation? You've got to connect those accomplishments back to how it's actually driving towards business goals or achieving those business goals that were kind of set in a corporate environment. So I think as you're saying, it can't just be I'm bragging for bragging's sake. You've got to connect it back into why do I as your manager care? Like what difference does it make to me that you accomplished X, Y, and Z? And by doing that, you also then frame it a little bit often more as a team accomplishment without necessarily removing yourself from the equation of value that was created.
Thank you. Thank you for the amazing panel.
Thank you so much. Amazing panel. Thank you very much. So, yes. And I want to say the fun doesn't stop here. Next week, we're having our general session at Atlanta Tech Village. And Abby, can you please tell us about our general session next week?
The next week's session is the marquee event for the Wireless Technology Forum. It's the annual analyst event where we're going to talk about predictions for 2020 and beyond in the mobile ecosystem. What's coming up and how is it going to make the world great? And what is the business benefit to 5G, whatever's changing in the technology landscape.
Thank you, ladies. Don't forget, this is our last session for 2018. Our first event, we normally repeat 3 times. We meet the second Thursday of every month. Our first event in 2019 is the first Thursday of February because it's Valentine's Day, the second Thursday. And you know what we get on Valentine's Day, right? Lots of love. So please join us again. Thank you, LinkedIn, Eris, and all of our sponsors. And please follow us and join us. Join our movement, join our mission. Consider sponsoring us or at least being a member of the Wireless Technology Forum. Y'all were fabulous. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Thank you.